thanks everyone for tuning in, and thanks to Nick for hosting the 5th annual PitchCon. This is a phenomenal event. Already over $11,000 raised for ALS. It's just great. So everything Nick does for charity and all that. And this has been a fun event. I've been tuning in, and this will be a fun panel. Let's introduce everyone else here. Obviously, I'm Eric Cross. You can find me at Eric Cross 04. But we got the awesome Shelly Verougstraete with us here. Shelly, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. I mean, it's been a beautiful weekend here in Virginia. It's like 60 degrees, which is like crazy. But yeah, I've been enjoying all the panels this weekend. And I'm excited to talk some hitting prospects with you two.
Now, I always have to ask you this every time I podcast with you. Either of the two dogs in the vicinity with you?
Yes, they're both here. So if you happen to see either Orsillo or Soto or hear any strange snoring, I apologize.
There's always at least one with you. I love that. It's like they're a part of the Shelly Verougstraete experience. And Brent Hershey from Baseball HQ. Brent, saw you a couple months ago out in First Pitch. And how you doing?
I'm doing well. Good to be here. Good to be here chatting prospects with you all, and agree the great work that Nick and his crew have done in putting this event together. So
there's so many good people in this industry doing a lot of good for charities. Justin Mason does a lot with TGFBI. It's so fun to be a part of stuff like this and talk a little bit about prospects along the way, which is obviously what we're going to be talking about here today. There was a pitcher version of this a few days ago. I believe it was on Thursday, if I recall correctly. So we will be doing the hitter version. And there's a lot of fun hitting prospects that are going to be either on the opening day roster or debuting, early on in the season. If you look at the top 400 ADP since January 1st, so about almost 4 weeks now, you got 20 hitting prospects, just hitters, in the top 400 ADP. So that's to be really fun. But before we get into any specific players, let's just talk about our general strategy for targeting prospects in redraft leagues. I think people that know us, that we cover prospects, think we just love to draft them. That might not always be the case in redrafts. So, Shelly, in redrafts, I know sometimes it can kind of depend on how the draft boards fall in, how your team's looking at the, whenever you are targeting these guys. But in general, what's your thought on targeting prospects in redraft leagues?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of like the manager who typically doesn't draft a lot of prospects. Because I mean, I've seen so many guys that, I love just like fall on their face. Hey Carter Keyboom. I miss you, guy. But when it comes to like DCs, so deeper leagues, I tend to go like a little bit more safer. But if I was in like a 10 league, a 10 team league or a 12 team league, maybe some of my last picks, I'll go for, as much ceiling as I can, because I have the ability to, drop someone and pick up, one of those old reliable guys, right? Who's always seemed to be on the waiver wire. So it really does depend on the particular league that I'm in. So smaller, yeah, I'll take the gamble. Deep leagues, no, give me the steady eddies.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, because the replacement value is so much higher in those 10 and 12 team leagues, where like, hey, it's almost little risk and potential higher rewards. If you get a rookie that you get late that pans out, great. If not, you drop him for whoever the hot bat is, maybe a veteran, maybe another rookie, who knows.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely a great point there, and I'm kind of with you too. Like, unless it's a prospect that I'm like really gung ho about.
Sure.
And again, I've been gung-ho about prospects, and they've fallen on their face as well. Like your Carter Keyboom is everyone knows what name I'm going to say right here, Jared Kelenic. So it does happen. It's unfortunate. That's why I've always said like the Tatises, the Vlad Juniors, the Acuñas, those guys are the exception to the rule, not the expectation. But Brent, what are your thoughts on or your strategy for rookies in redraft leagues?
Yeah, I mean, I think about it a lot in the way similar to Shelly about kind of. It's different for like just standard 15 team or 12 team rosters with 5 or 6 bench spots. That's quite a bit different than a 50 round kind of draft and hold. So I just echo a lot of the things she said. One of the things that I think about in terms of how far to go, how soon to commit or if to commit to some of these guys is their MLB kind of team situation. Like is the organization that they're in, where are they along that kind of rebuild to like going for it spectrum? And just mix that into the whole balance of upside and proximity to MLB, guys that are in the high minors, and just kind of with the understanding, as we've seen over the years, that some of the teams that are in rebuild mode, want to see what they have with these guys. The Nationals last year, sticking with C.J. Abrams and just playing him the whole time. And that's something that Dodgers or other teams that are kind of at different places along that line, can't afford to do. So just being aware of those roster situations is one thing I'm especially attuned to.
Perfect example of that. You mentioned the Dodgers, obviously Michael Busch, who finally is out. We'll talk about Busch a bit more later on, but perfect example. Guy that looked at Major League ready, was in the upper minors for, I think it was like 1,500 plate appearances over two and a half seasons in AA and AAA, and didn't really get much run at all because Dodgers were pretty much loaded everywhere and had other top prospects too that they tried out, like Miguel Vargas and whatnot. So yeah, that definitely plays a big factor in team context, league context. Definitely huge in deciding whether or not you want to draft any of these players that we'll be talking about this year. So let's go over to the player talk here. We'll start with kind of like the big four in terms of ADP. We got 4 hitting prospects inside the top 200. The top rookie in general is Yamamoto, but he's like top 40 ADP lately, which is insane to me. But 4 on the top 200. We have Evan Carter going right around pick 140, Jackson Chourio right around pick 150, Langford around 165, and Noelvi Marte with the Cincinnati Reds going around 171. So let's kind of break these up 2 and 2. We'll clump the 2 Texas guys together. So Carter 140, Langford at 165. Shelly, what are your thoughts on these two? Do you like those ADPs? Just personally, at least for Evan Carter, and obviously I'm a huge Langford guy too, but I'm surprised the Carter ADP isn't higher given what he did end of last season, the postseason run with Texas. So I'm actually kind of surprised his ADP is not higher.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I kind of agree with it, but I'm actually surprised that it's that high. But I understand why people got excited about what Carter did last year. Because I know, like, since he's been drafted, we've been like, when is that power coming? When is that power coming? And he hit like 4 or 5 home runs, and that's not even counting the postseason. So I'm still a little bit skeptical on if that power still remains. But I mean, I still think that he's going to be, even at the 139 ADP. I think you're not going to be upset with that draft pick. You might be a little bit upset that maybe he doesn't return the amount of home runs that you're, kind of like projecting when you're kind of like, sketching out your drafts and stuff like that. But I mean, I think he's going to get plenty of playing time, and he's going to be good for batting average and stuff like that. And definitely, RBIs and runs with the Rangers, awesome lineup that they had. So while I feel that it's a little bit high, I totally get it. But I don't think it's going to kill you. And then when it comes to Langford, I'm very conflicted about where he's going, because everything that I've read, some video that I've seen, everything, I've fallen in love with the kid, right? But it's just like we still don't know if he's actually going to make the opening day roster. Right. And if you're, taking him at 164, you kind of want him to have that job out of spring. Maybe he pulls an Anthony Volpe or something and totally kills it in spring and, makes the opening day roster. And then I think that particular pick could be good. But if I'm drafting right now, I need a little bit more assurance to take a player at that cost. But he could totally kill it this year.
Yeah, I'm very conflicted on Langford as well. As he's my number 1 overall prospect long term, and at this ADP, I'm okay with it. But yeah, I'm not 100% sure. I think pretty 50-50 right now if he's going to be on the opening day roster. If not, he's probably up pretty early. So I don't think you'll hate that. But then again, if he does tear up his spring training, like you were saying, and it's starting to look more and more like he will be in the opening day roster, I don't think we're getting him anywhere near pick 165, unfortunately.
Sure, yeah.
ADP is probably going to go up, higher than Churio, probably maybe even higher than Carter, or at least into that range. But yeah, Langford is, obviously awesome all the way around. And for what it's worth, your roster resource has him projected as a starting DH. We'll see if that happens. Texas has a lot of options, like you mentioned, Shelly. That lineup is studly all the way around. For Evan Carter, they have him penciled in the cleanup spot, right behind Semien Seager and Adelise Garcia, and right in front of Josh Young. That the lineup is just ridiculous, and they're going to add a full year of Carter and close to a full year or a full year of Langford. That's just almost not even fair. But Brent, what are your thoughts on this Texas outfield duo for 2024?
Yeah, I'm quite a bit more cautious on Carter, actually, and it goes back to his struggles against lefties. Basically, we mentioned it in the forecaster. All year last year, he had one extra base hit against a lefty. And the previous years weren't quite as bad as that, but obviously you want to see a guy. You want to see a little bit more than that against higher level pitching. And I guess I wonder too about where he's going, the 139. If are you getting just a platoon player there? He came up on September 8th, and kind of including the playoffs, Texas faced 11 left-handed starters the rest of the way. Not a lot. And he sat in 6 of those games. So while long term I am excited about Carter's ability, he's young, he can still adjust. I really wonder if, given the other players going around him there, if just that you could be disappointed if he ends up, as more of a platoon bat there. So especially given that at that ADP, I'm definitely I'm not interested in Carter at that point. Langford. I mean, part of me also is kind of cautious sometimes with these, even these high upside rookies, trying to balance that when there's no track record like that with Langford. I would kind of like to see how he does against major league pitching first. Again, the fact that he's lower, or down at 164 makes it more likely probably than Carter if I'm choosing between those two that I would draft him. But even with those exciting long-term skills, when I'm trying to maximize my team for this year only, it's those guys that sometimes I'm kind of okay with missing out on because of the bust rate in year one for so many of them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a great point. And I think for me too, it kind of boils down to the outfield position specifically. Kind of gets
It does. Yep.
yeah.
I hear you.
After like the Carter range, so ideally, so in a 15-teamer, Carter's going off like around that round 9 range or so. More often than not, I'm hoping to have 2 outfielders already by the time we get to like round 10 or so.
Mm-hmm.
Then in the outfield 3 range, that's where I've had a hard time trying to find. Like there's a handful of guys here or there that I like the value on or the upside on, but that's in general, that's kind of a weak spot for that position. So yeah, I'm going to try to at least have a couple shares of Langford. Carter, I'm honestly okay with that. So I think even if he gives you 15 to 18 home runs, 20 plus steals, again, like I don't think you'll hate it. Maybe it won't be a huge ROI, but I don't think you'll hate it either. But Langford, yeah, I want to get. I'm going to have some serious FOMO because with how high I am. He's going to be the second guy from this 2023 draft class to debut. Obviously, Nolan Shanuel debuted last year after playing 12 seconds in the minor leagues because the Angels just needed a first baseman. So it looks like Langford will be the number 2 guy from this class to debut in under a year, which is just awesome to see. Teams push these guys, and he's he looks ready. But it'd be a very interesting duo and a very fun lineup for Texas. Sure. The other 2 here. In the top 4 for ADP, we got Jackson Churio, 149.5 on average since January 1st, and Noelvi Marte, 171.2. I'll go over to you first here, Brent. Are those, obviously Churio looks like he'll be on the opening day roster now, given the contract extension that he signed back in December. And Marte, we know Will. He already debuted last year and looks penciled in at the third base spot for Cincinnati. So where are you at on these two? Are these two guys you'd be looking to draft this year?
Chourio, possibly, especially kind of the situation again that I go back to with Milwaukee. I feel like they're kind of on the more of the rebuild end of things, even though they've had a really good team. I think that the kind of lack of signings that they're making and moves this year is pointing in a kind of retooling direction. So it feels like with the Chourio contract, I mean, I feel better about kind of him starting, as you said, in the majors. It's a lot of the same, some of the same concerns with Langford about just, again, lack of track record. I personally feel like Chourio's, I have Chourio ranked higher than Langford. So I feel that there's a little more upside there. So I haven't ended up with any Chourio yet in early drafts, but I think it's a possibility that I could see it even there at 140, 150, 149, 150. Marte, I think that certainly is further down again on the ADP list. I'm still curious, and I like the fact, as I've been talking about, that he had a good chunk of at bats at the major league level while still maintaining that rookie eligibility. But I think that whole Cincinnati infield situation with Candelario there now, especially that signing, makes me wonder if Cincinnati's ready to go with Marte at third base from the drop. But probably, I think for me, I am more open to possibly, making him at least a corner infielder, I think, on a kind of a standard level team if we're drafting here at this point. But it's someone that certainly I'll be paying attention to. Any news coming out of Cincinnati, the managers and front office statements during camp, and trying to determine, again, if they're committed to starting the opening day with Marte there, or if they'll send him back down and kind of as they're figuring out their infield.
Yeah, that's an interesting situation for sure, because when they acquired Candelario, in general, I thought it was a decent move for them, but also a head scratcher that's given all the young infielders they have there in Cincinnati. So I think I think a lot of people thought, all right, there's a trade coming, probably with Jonathan India, but that hasn't happened yet, and we're like 2 weeks away from pitchers and catchers reporting. So maybe it still could. They absolutely still could trade India. So I'm kind of wondering, like, who's the odd man out? It's probably not Matt McLean, probably not Ellie, and India is obviously more of a veteran, so they'll keep him in. So right now, the two you kind of look at are either Noelvi Marte or Christian Encarnacion Strand, who they could put over at first base. But that's kind of where Candelario could be. Yeah, it's gonna be really interesting the next few weeks to see if they make a trade for India with India involved or whoever else it might be. And then B, like, how do these spring training lineups really look? Because in general, I like Marte a lot. I've been very high on him since his days in the low minors in the Seattle Mariners org, and he's never put together that massive minor league season statistically. But the power's been there, the speed is there, and I'm kind of wondering when he bulked up a couple years ago when we were out at first pitch in 2021. I'm gonna guess it was. Would the speed still be there with the bigger frame? And yeah, it still is. And he's still wanting to run that ballpark, obviously. So very intriguing. Chourio, obviously, super high upside. I'm kind of wondering if he struggles initially, especially in the batting average department. He's a bit more aggressive than most of the other guys we're talking about here. So maybe pitchers exploit that. And obviously, that will be up to him to adjust. Obviously, the talent is massive. But I think out of these two, I'll probably, if I do have any shares of either, it'll probably be more so towards Marte and hoping that he has that starting spots than going with a Jackson Chourio. I'd rather go like Evan Carter in that range than Chourio personally. But Shelly, what are your thoughts on this duo here?
I mean, I really do like this duo. And honestly, I think I would rather go Chourio than Carter. Because if my draft is like going well enough that I feel that I can take a gamble on one of these two young guys at this particular range. I'm going to go with Churio because I think that he has the bigger ceiling than Carter does. And I really do think that he does have he's going to be playing center field in Milwaukee opening day based on, that extension that he signed. I mean, unless he completely falls on his face, which I don't expect him to. So honestly, I would take Churio because I think that there is going to be the same, probably more power and maybe a little bit more speed from him. I mean, he's going to be in the worst lineup. But I don't know. If I was going to take a gamble on at least the first two guys in ADP ranks, Carter or Churio, it's going to be Churio. Marte, I'm still not sure. Everything that the Reds have said, that they are just going to go in to opening day with just this amazing infield, right? And I just think that they're cool with that because I don't think that they're getting. It doesn't sound like they're getting what they want for trading any one of these guys. It doesn't matter who. So I think they're just going to go for it, and I think it's just going to be like this frustrating carousel every week outside of Candelaria, right? Because it came out this week that Candelaria is going to play every day. I just think it's just going to be this carousel of frustration for us fantasy managers. And it really depends. And maybe they just say, Marte, just go back down to AAA so you get every day at bats and you come up when someone gets injured, right? So Marte's ADP scares me a bit. I mean, I like him long term, but that draft cost is pretty high for someone who I really do not feel has an everyday role.
All right, so to wrap up these four, Shelly, rank these four in order of most projected most shares for you this year to least.
Churio, Langford, Carter, Marte.
Brent, how about you?
Marte, Churio, Langford, Carter.
All right, so both on the low end for Carter there. All right, interesting. I just put out an impromptu poll. I thought that'd be a fun little see what everyone thinks between Carter and Churio for this year because both very fun players, absolutely. All right, let's move out of the top 200 and into the kind of 200 to 300 range. And the next one in ADP, Jackson Holliday, who's I think more people have him number one than people that have Langford or Caminero or Churio. But it's definitely a good fun debate there long term. It looks like he's kind of trending as the opening day shortstop. Baltimore's almost like the Cincinnati of the American League. All this great young talent, especially in the infield. And where do they put all these guys? But obviously, when Holiday's ready, he's going to play. ADP right now 225.8 since January 1st. Again, that's probably going to be another one that if that likelihood that he is the starter opening day starts to kind of tick up as we get closer to opening day, you'll see that ADP jump at least to the top 200, maybe even closer to 150, given, the hype around him right now. I'm personally, I think it'll have to depend on where the ADP does land, in like February and March. But I'm kind of wondering if he's not going to be like a big impact guy this year. Obviously, he's going to hit for average again on base. Like that's like no question about it. Baseball America gave 2 80 grade hit tools in their 2024, rankings and profiles. He was one of them, along with Adiel Amador from the Colorado Rockies. I'm just kind of wondering how much power does he get to this year? He's still kind of developing, still filling out that frame. So I'm kind of shying away, at least for this year. Obviously, talent is there long term. But Shelly, do you see yourself in investing in Jackson Holliday this year?
Probably not, especially in like redraft leagues. I mean, I kind of feel the same way with you, Eric, that I think that he'll probably exhaust his prospect eligibility this year. Because I really do think that the Orioles are going to go extremely young and just go with Holliday. I mean, Holliday hasn't really failed, which has been like it's been incredible just to watch like the box scores and just see everything that he's doing. I find him extremely fascinating, right? Because it's just like there isn't like a lot of power and there's not a lot of speed, but he just flat out hits. And I just think it's going to be extremely fun to see someone as young as he is in the majors. But, from a redraft standpoint, I don't think that I'm really interested this year. The Orioles have a stacked lineup. So it's like, where is he going to hit? Like, it's probably going to be in like the lower half of the lineup. And then just going in like he hasn't hit a home run against a lefty, which is kind of interesting. So it's just like, I think that long term, I think he's going to be a phenomenal player. But I at this particular cost, I can't do it because I don't know. I think he's going to be okay, but he's not going to be outstanding.
Yeah. I kind of think of the profile as similar to a former number 1 overall prospect that was a great hit tool. And we kind of question where's the power speed. Not gonna get into that guy because he's in some legal trouble right now. But that guy did end up adding some power. So Holiday could as well. I'm definitely think he could. Obviously, he won't be a big power guy ever, but right away, I'm just not loving that draft price. But Brent, how about you? Are you 3 for 3 here with Shelly and I, or are you targeting Holiday?
Not necessarily targeting him, although again, for me, he's the number 1 prospect overall. And there are times I think when, especially how my draft's gone, if I haven't taken on any crazy risks and that kind of thing, maybe I do something like Holiday just because of I think the ceiling's so high. Mm-hmm. I do agree that probably. For this year only, like we're talking in redrafts, you're not going to be wowed by the power. I think that he will develop some strength and eventually get there. I also think that I don't have the positional, even though where the Orioles are, as AL East champs and playoffs, I don't have the positional questions with Holiday about where he's going to play as I do like with Marte or someone like that. I think when he's ready, he's going to play. I would not be surprised if he gets if he plays positions other than shortstop, kind of plays around a little bit, switches some positions, which again is always helpful kind of in season to gain extra eligibility. I just think, again, especially if they're keeping all of these infielders that they have, they'll continue to mix and match parts there. Although I think he's a dynamic enough player, I think, and all that they have invested in him, I think he's going to be the one lineup kind of standard. Like, whether he's playing second, I wouldn't be surprised to see him play at third. If he's at shortstop, he's going to kind of be there. So that, along with kind of the ceiling and the fact that I do think he's close. I mean, he's he's had a crazy meteoric rise through that system, and again, at his age, the pedigree, all that kind of thing. I think all of that points to kind of a positive and possibly being able to hit the ground running. So all that to say, I probably not, but he's one I keep my eye on in drafts. That if I'm in a room that where he's fallen a little bit, maybe I take a shot a round or two beyond his ADP. It all depends, though. It only takes one other person right in that room who wants him, who wants to not miss that shiny toy to snag him there. So I'm not necessarily targeting him, but because of the upside and I think some of those external factors, he's one that I'd be more willing than some of the other guys we've talked about to kind of take a shot on, even at that relatively high ADP.
Yeah, and like I said, Baltimore is kind of like Cincinnati. They have a lot of flexibility here. In addition to with Jackson Holiday, Jordan Westbrook looks like he'll be a starter. Then they still have Kobe Mayo, Connor Norby, the outfielders Kelliher and Kierstead. This could be a potentially stacked AAA lineup to start the year. Shelly, how close are you to Norfolk? Because that's gonna be a fun team over there.
Yeah, I've actually been down there a couple times. I'm about an hour and a half, 2 hours with traffic, so it's
not terrible.
Yeah, I've taken, like a Thursday or Friday night to go down there and just watch it. Especially last year, I did it a couple times because it's been like crazy good.
I know.
Yeah,
It's
and I'm
awesome.
like 10 minutes away from the Richmond Flying Squirrels, which is the Giants AA.
Mhm.
And it's very different. So yeah, I've been making that trek down to Norfolk.
I would too if I was living down that way for sure. Baltimore, and it's probably not going to be, not going to end anytime soon. Baltimore, obviously, you got a deep farm system and one of the best player development systems around. So, all right, let's move on to the other kind of buzzy name now I alluded to earlier in the show, and now that he's been traded from the Dodgers to the Chicago Cubs, and that's Michael Busch, who I felt like was in the upper minors for 5 or 6 years. It felt like, which actually isn't too far off from what he actually was. But now it looks like you look at the Cubs' projected opening day lineup. They do have him in a platoon at first base with Patrick Wisdom. I don't know how much I believe that, just because we know what Patrick Wisdom is at this point, and it's not a guy that should be starting regularly or even close to it. And then Busch, he probably not so much second baseman anymore, probably more of a corner infield guy, but third base is another spot that's kind of up in the open right now. They have Nick Madrigal penciled in there for what it's worth. So I do think Busch plays, gets at least 500 plate appearances this year. And the ADP was kind of in the 500 range. After the trade, it's been more like in the 350 range, give or take. And I'm still fine with that. You look at a guy like Busch that is improved as a pure hitter over the last couple of years, increased the contact rates, walking at a high clip, trim the K rate a little bit. Not going to provide much speed, but at the same time, this guy that's 25 homer bats, hit for a solid average, solid OBP as well. So for given where he's going in that 350 range, I'm kind of okay with that. And again, and that might come with dual eligibility too. We'll get to see how where they put him. He might be first and third, whatever. So that'll be nice too. So I kind of like Michael Busch at this ADP range, even with the jump since the trade, which was to be expected. Brent, are you in on Busch this year?
Yeah, I am interested in there basically for all the reasons you mentioned. I mean, I go back to my, team context thing. Again, just having that opportunity there that they're talking about for him playing first base, assuming for now they don't sign anyone else to kind of take away that position. And the multi-eligibility thing, because he's most likely, I mean, you need to check your format, but he's most likely not going to be listed right now as a first baseman. So whether he's listed as a second baseman or a third baseman, I've seen him, it'll only be within a couple weeks, again, depending on your league rules, where he'll have that flexibility, which I think is always helpful. He's certainly the type of player, the type of rookie that I am more apt to go after, one that has, sustained high level of success at the high minors, even though it hasn't translated over to the majors yet. A little bit older, so you think he's more mature physically and all that kind of stuff. And so yeah, Busch is someone, again, even with the jump up in kind of ADP. He's someone that I'm kind of keeping an eye on, again, kind of for a corner usually, or an extra bat when it comes down to that kind of range for him.
How about you, Shelly?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think he's definitely a good CI target for me. The only thing that scares me is I'm afraid that the Cubs are going to sign Cody Bellinger and totally and totally block Michael Busch again and just infuriates the entire fantasy baseball Twitter sphere.
Me especially.
Exactly, right. So, but I mean, if you think that he's going, if Bellinger's going somewhere else, I think this is a fine pick. I mean, I don't think that he's going to post like the 150 WRC plus that he posted in AAA, because that would be phenomenal. So, but if you're getting an above league average bat for your CI, that's golden, right? So take the chance and just hope that Bellinger doesn't sign with the Cubs.
Yeah, I'm hoping if that does happen, obviously it's not going to be good for Bush or even Pete Crow Armstrong if Belly's playing some outfield there. But I'm hoping like, if that does happen, I'm like, all right, let's just put Bush over at third. Madrigal was better as like a bench guy anyway.
Right.
So that's been back in my mind too. And obviously, if I had to bet money on where Belly's going to go, I probably would bet on the Cubs. I haven't really heard him linked too hard to any other team. But who knows? Obviously, free agency can change very quickly.
Yeah.
But it's going to happen soon, though. I mean, it's January 27th here.
Exactly.
We're kind of running out of time for some,
Yeah.
Snell and Montgomery. And go ahead, Brent.
Yeah, I was just going to say, basically, I think where you were heading is that as you think about these rookies that we're all excited about and trying to, in our brains, think, oh, well, this guy's going to play here. At this point in the season, at this point in the off season, there's still like some pretty big, like you said, a ton of big regular free agents that are going to sign somewhere and alter that whole landscape. And I'm for one too, like we all love drafting early and all that kind of stuff, but this is kind of the risk that you inherit in doing that is that you can in your own brain have the perfect spot for Michael Bush. He gets traded there. And then the Cubs signed Bellinger, and he's just a backup anyway. So I guess that's partially just being aware of that, partially a call to hold off on drafting as long as you can until you know more of the rosters are set. But I think it seems like especially this year, there's a lot of at this point there's still so many or several big kind of dominoes to fall. Matt Chapman, is another one. That aren't fantastic players, but yet when they sign somewhere, he's going to be the starter, right? It's going to bump some third baseman that we have on our individual depth charts now kind of off of the picture or down to a corner situation. So I think that's just a domino effect we need to keep in mind as we're talking about rostering rookies and that thing, especially if getting the guy starting at the beginning of the year is kind of essential or important to your strategy.
Yeah, Brent, you just literally described my internal struggle every like October, November. I'm always like, all right, I'm not going to do these early drafts. I'm going to hold off until like at least December or whatever.
Yeah,
and then I see people post draft boards on Twitter, X, whatever we call it these days. And then, always have some live drafts out at First Pitch Arizona, which I didn't do this past year, but did back previous year. So I always cave. I always cave and do a draft before December and usually get, whether it's a reliever, like everybody that was drafting Ryan Presley now or kind of shouting into the void with Josh Hader signing. And that's always the risk of those early drafts for sure. And Bellinger, Snell, Jomo, Chapman, all these guys could definitely throw a monkey wrench into some of our draft picks and some teams' depth charts for sure. But yeah, hoping that doesn't happen because I do like Michael Bush, obviously. And yeah, Shelly, I would definitely be screaming on Twitter if Bush is blocked in Chicago after being blocked. That would just be the worst. Oh, my word. But all right, let's keep going outside the top 200 ADP here and our favorite post 200 ADP targets. So again, a lot of fun names. Just to list some of the ADPs here. After Holiday, we had Junior Caminero at 232. Jung-Hoo Lee, the newest San Francisco Giant outfielder, 255. Parker Meadows, 283. Sal Frelick, 290. Austin Wells, about 310. Jordan Lawler has been dropping because of the Eugenio Suarez signing last month, down to 317. Tyler Black, 328. Manzardo, 347. Pete Crow Armstrong, 352. Mason Wynn, 358. Colt Keith, 361. Garrett Mitchell, 371. Pair of Red Sox outfield prospects with literally the exact same ADP since January 1st. Ceddanne Rafaela and Wilyer Abreu are on 381. And then Michael Bush, 388. But Shelly, who is your favorite post 200 ADP target for hitting prospects this year?
None of the guys you just said. My favorite guy, honestly, is Johnny DeLuca. I'm really intrigued that Tampa traded for him because he has been a pool happy guy. And Tampa has been, just look at Isaac Paredes. Like they got him to pull and he hit 30 30 home runs, which I never thought that he could get to. And while I don't know if he has an everyday job out of the gate, I think that he could definitely hit 20 home runs this year. And at an ADP of 677 since the first of the year, in like DCs, he could be like your sixth, seventh outfielder. That's totally fine. Take the gamble with him. I just really like his profile, and I think that Tampa can get the most out of him, which says a lot because he's coming from the Dodgers, right? But just like Michael Busch, he was freed. So I think that, especially for where he's going, I think that he could be one of those sneaky guys that you draft extremely late in DCs that comes up big, that you're spouting about like in September. This guy helped me win my league. So Johnny DeLuca, I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, I love that pick too. I already have a share of DeLuca. He was kind of written off a little bit, or undervalued, I should say. It's due to he was a little bit older for the level, and people love to look at that. But look at what he did. 2021 went 22-20 in 101 games. 2022 went 25-17 in 98 games, and then last year 17-12 in just 73 games. So nice little power speed blend. Definitely think that he's going to be a fun player. I love that pick a lot. Brent, who's your favorite post 200 ADP target?
Yeah, I chose Colt Keith there at 361. Again, I think what draws me to him is kind of the combination there of a strong power tool and a strong hit tool. Took a really big step forward in 2023. Pretty much split between AA and AAA, so he's already succeeded kind of at that higher level. Combined 27 homers, 101 ribbies. Again, I think the fact that as you look back at his stats, you kind of and scouting reports, you kind of see and hear about the improvements he's made with his hitting over the past several years, and that's always positive, right? I mean, that the player development crew has been able to, and coaching crew has been able to kind of continue to get the best out of his skills, and the player is able to kind of adjust that way. I think the defense, it sounds like the defense needs work. He kind of came up as a third baseman, and they've kind of switched him and told him that kind of his future is going to be at second base, which is probably likely that the reason that they didn't call him up at the very end of last year, because it sure seemed like, from the bat perspective anyway, that he was ready. So again, on that Detroit team that has some openings there, Keith is someone I think, even in I think it's not out of the realm of possibility that with a really strong spring he could make the opening day roster. But even if he doesn't, I think he will be there at AAA. And certainly could be a kind of an early season call up, especially if that goes as well as what is overall 2023 season. And so I pick 351. Even as kind of a bench spot on a kind of standard league, I think that's someone that you could stash away there and possibly get some good return on.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think Keith, I think he's one of the better hitting prospects, just better pure hitters in the minor leagues right now. And I like to move to second base. I think obviously wherever he was going to be, he was going to have an impact there. But I think that type of profile at second base, potentially decent average, 25 plus home runs, handful of steals, love that. And you hit it right on the head, Brent. There's a lot of openings here in Detroit, and my guy's going to be a Detroit guy too, one that has already debuted. But right now, current projected starter at second base is Zach McKinstry. So, and on third base is Matt Vierling. Really outside of, kind of the top four on this lineup. And then like Javier Baez, even though he's not that great anymore, but they're going to play him obviously because of what they're paying him. There's a lot of openings on this team. A couple outfield spots, second base, third base. So definitely some spots for, and Detroit's got a few, my guy here, Parker Meadows. They also got Justin Henry Malloy ready to break in soon. So good to see a few rookies here, but yeah, my guy is Parker Meadows, who came up end of last year. Played, so he hit 145 plate appearances, 125 at bats, so still technically a prospect. Snuck him in here with eligibility. And in those 145 plate appearances, had 3 home runs, 8 steals, only hit 232. I think that's kind of been the question for him is, how high of an average does he provide? Always been a guy that walks a decent amount, so OBP formats gets a little bit of a boost there. But I think, he's got solid quality of contact metrics. He's a plus runner. In his time last year in the major leagues, had a 90th percentile sprint speed. So I think he can keep the average in like that 250 to 260 range. Probably a 15 homer guy. I think he does have a little more power in the tank, but for this year, I think 15 is a fair expectation of what he's capable of. You look at what he did in the minor leagues over the last couple of years. He's been really pretty consistent in the power speed department. Went 20 home runs, 17 steals in 2022 in 127 games, then 19 and 19 last year in 113 games before he got promoted up to Detroit. So potential like 15 homer, 20 steal guy right away with an average that won't kill you. And he's projected to lead off. And, maybe he won't be the everyday leadoff guy, but they really don't have a lot of other options that really fit that spot outside of Meadows. And if he is leading off, that'd probably be in front of the trio of their current big three of Riley Green, Spencer Torkelson, and Kerry Carpenter. That's not Murderer's Row. It's not the Dodgers. It's not Texas. It's not Atlanta. But that's, a solid 3 to have behind you for sure. So maybe he's a guy to get you 80 to 90 runs over a full year. So going, close to pick 300 around, 283 on average over the last few weeks. I am definitely all in on Parker Meadows. I know James Anderson's been a huge Parker Meadows advocate as well. So maybe the ADP will continue to rise, but I like Parker Meadows a lot. As long as he's going there, I will definitely take him. That's like your outfield 5 in most leagues. So give me that upside all day for sure. Shifting over here to some undervalued guys. Brent, let's go over to you first on this one. Who is a undervalued prospect in redraft leagues this year?
I picked Pete Crow Armstrong, we mentioned earlier, about 352, and mainly because I just think the market's putting a lot of weight onto 19 plate appearances there. Again, a guy that's made adjustments at the plate throughout his minor league career. Definitely got into more power recently, which was the kind of the thing that people had questions about, or whether that was going to show. Again, this is sort of a depth chart play. It depends. The Cubs could well easily send him back to the minors, and some sites do have. I think Mike Talkman is on maybe Roster Resource as the starting center fielder. So I think it's possible, but I also, given kind of the pedigree he has, the fact that even when he gets on base, the speed is going to be there, and how important that is to us in the fantasy game. I think that Pete Crow Armstrong is a bit, like you say, undervalued with this group.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Redraft Dynasty, I think PCA is getting undervalued for sure. Shelly, who's your undervalued target this year?
Again, I can't follow directions, so it's like no one that you said before.
That's fine.
Exactly. I'm gonna go with Daryl Hernandez. Basically because I haven't heard like anyone talk about him. And maybe he's like a good guy for the next section of guys that we're going to be talking about. But he's projected to be the everyday shortstop for Oakland. And yes, you have to take a massive grain of salt with that because he's going to be hitting probably 8th or 9th in Oakland. So maybe he can get to 50 RBI by the end of the year. But I think he's going to have everyday playing time. He's always posted good averages. He has very little pop and very little speed, but he's just one of those guys that is going to have everyday playing time. You never know what's going to happen. Maybe he turns into someone like a slightly better, right? But he's definitely someone that I think listeners should just keep an eye out on, see how he's doing in spring. He's definitely a guy, maybe if your MI gets hurt, right? You just pick him up and he could be that glue guy that you need to get through 2 weeks while your starting shortstop is down, right? So it's just kind of like a guy that there's nothing sexy about him, like at all. But sometimes you just need those guys to get through the year. And I just haven't heard anyone talk about him. So I just wanted to give him like a, hey, I see you.
Yeah, no, and sexy doesn't always win. Obviously, we need production, and it doesn't have to be sexy. And Oakland, I think people just forget Oakland exists half the time, and they will still exist as they go to Vegas here in a couple of years. But my guy is Tyler Black from the Milwaukee Brewers. You know, going back to kind of what Brent was saying about team context and openings. Obviously, these guys need to play, and there's definitely an opening for Tyler Black. In Milwaukee, the current starter penciled in at third base is Andrew Monasterio. So yeah, that's an open spot for Tyler Black for sure. And Black quietly was just really, really good last year. Was very close to being the third guy last year to go 20 home runs and 70 steals. I missed it by 2 home runs, finished with 18 homers, 55 steals, hit 284, 417 OBP, nearly as many walks as strikeouts. Not going to be a huge power guy, but maybe someone over a full year gives you like 12 to 15 range. And he's going to provide a good amount of speed. He's a plus runner, so you can kind of pencil in 30 plus steals. So kind of like not your typical third baseman. Kind of reminds me of, you know, not perfect, but remember like Sean Figgins back in the day, how he was like the Dalmatian without the spots at the third base position, so to speak. Guy that was a lot of speed, not a lot of power. I think that's kind of what Black's going to be. But hey, if I'm getting, you know, potential double-digit home runs and 25 plus steals right away, if he's given that spot, I'm all for it. And a guy that's, you know, solid contact skills, good OBP skills, K rate under 20%. These are the types of guys that I look to target because I think they usually, or most of the time, transition a little more seamlessly than these kind of like the wide variants, like Ellie De La Cruz, for instance, guys that maybe swing and miss a bit more, don't walk as much. He's not nearly as sexy as an Ellie or a Churio for sure, but definitely has the opportunity, has a fantasy-friendly skill set with that speed that we like to see. And if you can get that from a position that you usually don't get a ton of speed at, I will sign up for that all day. And the ADP on Black again is around 330 right now, 328.5 since January 1st. And I think I'm fine with that for sure. Real quick here, we got about 5 minutes or so before Nick pops back in to go to the next panel. So quickly, let's go our 2 favorite post 500 ADP targets, you know, for, you know, DCs, best balls, you know, these 40, 50 round formats where you're drafting 500 to 750 players. Real quick, Shelly, who are your 2 favorite targets back there?
So my number 1 guy is Verougstraete II. 95 stolen bases. What's not to love about that? But he's not like a Billy Hamilton, right? He has a little bit of pop in his bat. You know, he doesn't have a noodle bat, right? Like when we were down in Arizona, just the few games that I did see him in, like some of the sounds off his bat, like those, I'm like, okay, this guy's has some pop, and he plays in an amazing center field. If St. Louis really wants to, you know, get fun, right? Which I don't know if they'll do. I mean, he could debut this year. I really think that he is. I just think that he just brings defense, which the Cardinals have always just kind of prioritized. So I think that he has a chance to really just steal a whole lot of bases, which, you know, in this day and age, you really need. And then Kobe Mayo. I kind of felt weird picking like an Orioles guy because, like the Reds, they have probably too many hitting prospects. And they just don't seem eager to trade any of their prospects to get pitching. So maybe he makes his debut. I have no idea. But what he did last year was like really, really good. Like in AA, he hit 307, 424, 603, 17 homers. That he got, you know, called up to AAA, hit another 12. There could be something there. And if you're picking past 500, it's basically just a crapshoot. So pick guys you like. So yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. Verougstraete is a guy I had too.
Yeah.
He is just phenomenal. But before I get to my guys, Brent, who are your 2?
Two I picked were middle infielders, kind of at the far back end of kind of a 50-round draft, and that's Matt Shaw, infielder for the Cubs, a really quick riser, 2023 first rounder, kind of a high baseball IQ type. Ended up with 65 at bats at Double-A. Just a quick mover. The fact that we've heard some whispers from him and the Cubs that he's doing some workouts at third base is interesting. Again, talking about the opening that they have there. It just seems to me as a type of player coming from a big college program at Maryland. He's performed really well, obviously, to get all the way to Double-A there in his first half season of pro ball. Could be kind of one of these quick to the majors guys that you get some production out of. And the second one is Jace Young, Josh's brother in Detroit. Again, we talked about the openings at Detroit. He's listed as a second baseman, kind of had come up through the system that way. And then most recently, around the time the talk of moving Colt Keith from third to second, there was talk of moving Young from second to third. So the fact that the Tigers, with these couple big prospects that they have that are almost ready, Young hasn't hit AAA yet. But the fact that they're moving them around and trying them out at the minor league level, there is, I think, pretty important to take note of. He's going to come along if he gets up in 2024, most likely later on. But is selective, walks a lot, launched 28 homers in high A and Double-A last year, and has good bloodlines, right? Josh being his brother. So Matt Shaw and Jace Young are two guys that I'm aiming in on some of these deep leagues.
Yeah, I like both those picks as well. I had a chance to interview Young with Chris Clegg. He was a great guy and talked about him and his brother and that connection. That was really fun to chat with him. Real quick mine, Chase DeLauder and Victor Scott. But give a third name since Shelly also went with Scott. I'll throw Damiano Parmigiani in there, who I think was the AFL/FPAS prospect favorite of this year. There's always one every year. It was Mervis last year, Joey Weimer the year before that. I think Parmigiani is this year's favorite. Third base spot is currently Kevin Biggio. We know what we got with him, so keep an eye on that. And whether it's him, whether it's Barger, whether it's Orelvis Martinez, that spot's gonna be interesting. And then Chase DeLauder, I think, is up early part of the season, probably before the end of June. Contact skills are solid. The approach is there. Power, speed, blend. So I think once he's up, he's going to have a very fantasy-friendly profile and be a guy that you're going to be happy you drafted in these best ball DC formats. And that leads us back in to the hitting prospect extraordinaire. Where is he? Where's Nick? Nick, I'm leading you in. Come on,
all right,
buddy.
Fine. All right.
There he is.
Hey, guys. What's going on? How we doing?
Hey.
Yeah.
Doing good.
Thank you so much for a fantastic panel. And I'm just gonna have to rewatch this again. I already forgot their names because this is just what I have to do by contract, is forget who all of them are. No, I really thank you guys so much for being a part of this. And we are getting close to the 12,000 mark, I believe. But we're at 11,300 right now, I should say, which is still amazing. Thank you all so much for supporting the cause. Don Scott with $100 and Nick Mariano for 50. But Brent, Eric, Shelly, I think I'm seeing all of you in Florida. I don't know. I'm seeing Brent at the very least. Shelly, I'm going to see you there. Eric, I'm going to see you there.
Yep.
Great. Good to see you all in a month. It's going to be awesome.
Absolutely.
Can't wait. And I believe Brent's